Good morning, everybody. This is Ron. Welcome to Story Time. It is January 13th, Friday the 13th, 6:17 a.m., and this podcast is being recorded on location at the Colorado Boulevard, Pasadena location of Lovebirds Bakery and Cafe. The article for today is from the current issue, which is the January 2017 issue of the Rake. And it is an editorial piece by, it's a column called The Contrarian, and the title of the piece is The Banality of the Ballot, and it is by Nick Scott. The U.S. election is finally over, and so, thanks to gullibility, anger, spin, artifice, populism, incompetence, corruption, and rampant stupidity, is democracy itself, says this issue's loquacious curmudgeon. Many of us, barroom philosophers in particular, articulate the word with reverence bordering on awe. Grown men underscore its sanctity with a thump of palm on oak, second syllable usually, when barking it across a pub table. Its utterance conjures up images of sages in togas pacing the squares of ancient Athens, fingering their voluminous beards and pioneering brilliant new ways of conducting civic harmony. So ingrained in our collective belief is its being unequivocally a good thing, the United States government's annual human rights report on China always waxes superior about the Communist Party-controlled state's lack of democracy, with the same air of unambiguous rectitude it might if bemoaning the lack of food, water, and medicine in West Africa. And yet, according to a paper published by the World Values Survey in July, more than two-thirds of American millennials do not consider it essential to live in a country that is governed democratically. Since then, a real estate mogul and reality TV protagonist with a political CV you could scrawl on a beer mat has become America's first Barocca-marinated demagogue-in-chief against the popular vote. Make no mistake, democracy's unelected position at the heart of Western culture is under threat. And when you look at the revolting, shameful farrago that is modern politics all over the English-speaking world, it is not surprising. The run-up to November 8, 2016 went beyond farce into the realms of substandard seaside pantomime. It was the most unedifying spectacle in U.S. political history. The after effects of this campaign may befoul our civic life for some time to come, as the New Yorker put it. So ludicrously eventful was Trump's campaign, the movie version will need to be split into two parts, Kill Bill style. Hillary Clinton was the favorite as America went to the polls, yet from the start she would have had about as much chance as a cat sashaying through the gates of hell with a batch of fireworks strapped to its back had she been up against a plausible Republican candidate. As it happened, she was up against the worst political candidate since Blackadder's Baldrick stood in the Dunny-on-the-World by-election with a turnip sticking out of his mouth. He won. How she must have been wishing that Shiva Ayyadurai, the inventor of email, had never left Mumbai. Earlier this year, 84% of Democrats approved of the job Barack Obama was doing, while 86% of Republicans disapproved. You speculate how that stat will look for Trump by 2020, without considering the real possibility of the second American Civil War. And how is democracy faring in the land whose empire the sun once never set? In Britain, an unelected prime minister recently attempted to force through a hardened version of a constitutional decision, one referred to by the vice-chancellor of the University of Oxford as a bewildering act of self-harm, without the country's MPs getting to vote on the matter, in stark defiance of parliamentary arrangements. The leader in question, who had made it clear in a speech to investment bankers that she was against Britain leaving the EU a month before the vote, did so in deference to the outcome of a poorly understood advisory referendum, the campaigns for which were dripping with lies and obfuscation. A ballot eventually carried by 52% of a 72.2% turnout, many of whom either regret their vote or will be dead by the time their wishes become reality. Whether the British Parliament will get to vote on Brexit, essentially the domestic rule the Brexit supporters voted for but would rather didn't apply to this issue, remains to be seen. A general election is called for. Democracy advocates might cry, But if the nation were called to the ballot tomorrow, the incumbent party would come up against one headed by a man who, before becoming a household face, was accustomed to having loose change tossed sympathetically in his direction in the street, who is about as adept a parliamentarian as C-3PO counting backwards in binary, who has been accused of failing to deal with questions about his party's perceived issues with anti-Semitism, who seems incapable of effectively fending off accusations of being anti-American, anti-Israel, and soft on Hamas and Hezbollah, and whose economic policy seems, to many, about as credible as a chocolate Stanley knife. How, in light of the above, can we still insist on the virtue of a system that manifestly doesn't serve large modern populations? How, as long as divisiveness reigns with such impunity, can Abraham Lincoln's government of the people, by the people, for the people be realized? Not that we can blame the demise of democracy squarely at the leaders involved. Citizens of every political persuasion are fleeing to the two furthest reaches of the political scale, where, misty-eyed and drunk on solipsism, they can revel in their own moral self-importance. In response, our leaders, actual and potential, ditch any sense of civic servitude in favor of perception manipulation and spend vast amounts of public money hiring professional bullshitters to advise them how to do so. If one more UK politician affects a more plebeian accent, pretends to like Premier League football, or insists on being filmed wearing a hard hat next to some scaffolding, then I swear Apollo, the Greek god of truth, among other intangible entities, is going to spontaneously combust. And if the theatrical farce that is modern Western political theater does not prove me right, then surely the Bodie McBoatface fiasco, do look it up if you're unaware of it, confirms the veracity of Mark Twain's famous contention on the subject. If voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. While Sir Winston Churchill's even more acerbic take on the matter, the best arguments against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter, has never held such potent relevance. And yet, still we not only enshrine democracy, but try to enforce it on societies in which matters of family, tribe, sect, and personal friendships trump the apparatus of the state, usually in vain, even more pathetically. No, it is time to rethink this calamitous project and concede, like the German Democratic Republic giving East Berliners leave to dig their sledgehammers into the Berlin Wall, that democracy has failed. And what might we replace it with? The more annoyingly pragmatic of you may ask. But being a humble denizen of a modern civic quagmire, I offer no outright solutions, but plenty of minor suggestions. Legal consequences for breaking election promises might be a start. Or, better still, let's take the concept of a democracy back to the premise of the Greeks who coined the phrase, and ditch representational democracy for the chance to vote on individual issues. What else? Any statesman who claims to favor Beyoncé over Beethoven is to be subjected to a televised quiz about her song lyrics in a major city's public square and a government-bankrolled but independent election staffed by brilliant, parsimonious bullocks detectors is to be issued daily, debunking all the partisan horseshit right across the political scale that's come out of the back end of a printing press or Ethernet socket the previous day. And finally, if any prospective president of the United States of America ever again expresses a willingness to engage in fisticuffs behind a barn with a sitting vice president, let's just arm both with a snooker ball and a sock and turn the TV cameras on them. Winner takes all, including office. I jest, of course, but the failure of democracy is a serious business, and we clearly need, without any modern-day storming of the Bastille taking place, to press the reset button and find new ways of resolving differences and taking action to the satisfaction of the majority. Because the ancient Greeks who coined the term democracy would no more approve of its modern iteration than the founding fathers who wrote the Second Amendment would approve of bullets being sold in Walmart. So that was the article, The Banality of the Ballot by Nick Scott. He's listed as a curmudgeon rather than as a socialist, but I mean that's basically what he is a socialist. That's the old cry of the socialists is democracy doesn't work, why bother? And since we all want socialist paradise apparently, then we should just ditch democracy, ditch discussions and arguments and debates, and just get on with the business of creating socialist hell. So the other thing that I wanted to note on this is the way that this is written. Instead of being straightforward, he's got to put in a lot of conjecture or these little, like at the beginning of it says, many of us, bar-room philosophers in particular, articulate the word with reference bordering on awe. So it's full of that, where he interjects something in the middle of his sentence. And it's almost like going off on a tangent. And it makes it very difficult to read and very difficult to understand. The only thing that really comes across here is that he's angry, that I'm assuming that he was a Hillary supporter, and that he's extremely disappointed about her loss. And so this is kind of a whiny whiny complaint about the fact that Hillary Clinton lost the election. The other thing that is a glaring error is it says at the back, and finally, if any prospective president of the United States of America ever again expresses a willingness to engage in fisticuffs behind a barn with a sitting vice president. No, it was the other way around. It was Joe Biden who wanted to take Trump behind the barn and bash him around. Okay, it wasn't Donald Trump that made that threat. It was Joe Biden. And he should be taken out behind the barn and spanked for it. Anyways, that's the article in the current January 2017 issue of the Rake magazine. And I hope you enjoyed it. And the next episode of Storytime will be on next Tuesday. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.